Senator Lawler, you have 8 minutes, please.
Thanks very much, Las Cahirdach. I first of all must say this is a welcome piece of legislation, first introduced in the budget in 2018. Any of us who have been out there trying to work with those that have been pillared over the years, builders and developers, to get them off the ground to build houses, and that's the answer to the housing crisis, to build more houses, have found that over the years, the last couple of years, that people who were traditionally in the building trade were finding it extremely difficult to get finance. Banks weren't lending to them, and they still are not lending to them. As has already been mentioned, banks require at least 40 to 50% equity or capital before they will lend the balance. And some builders were actually getting finance from vulture funds at up to 15, 16, 17%, and it was making it unviable for them to commence building. And they would have sites around the country, not alone here in Dublin, but in various parts of the country. So from an overall strategy with regard to how we go forward with regard to building houses, we do need all parts to be functioning. And all parts include the small fella who's building 10 houses a year or 20 houses a year. And he needs to be able to get access to finance. And he hasn't been doing so heretofore. And when we look at it, this type of a loan that we made available, there are a couple of things that I would ask you to have a look at, Minister. The first one is the overall package, 750 million. You talk about no one builder will have any more than 5% of that pot. Now, if you had 20 builders at 5%, you're reducing the chances of the small guy getting in there. I think there should be a priority for the small fella, because the small fella in the future going forward will be building in the areas where the big builders, the big vulture funds at the moment, won't go into small towns and villages in rural areas around the country. So I think there should be, within the fund itself, we should set out maybe a certain percentage of it for those guys who have the capacity to build 10 to 15 to 20 houses a year, not the fellas who are building 200 and 300 houses per annum. So that would be. The second thing that worries me is that you talk about 5% exposure. 5% of the pot is 37.5 million, which is a lot of money. And it's only geared for those fellas who can provide the asset base in that. So maybe, Minister, you might look at that, and maybe you might even reduce it further from the 5% down to 2 or 1%, because it makes more sense. At least then you're giving the small guy, which I know it's your intention, the intention behind the bill to set up to do this.